Interesting topic for me to talk about this, business ethics. And I'm glad to see there's a couple of people who pitched. I was wondering how many people will actually arrive for this talk because what's ethics got to do with business? Really, I mean, are those two things even closely related to each other? Sometimes you look out there and you wonder if they are. And sometimes you see, on the rare occasion, unfortunately, that they are actually related and that the two things can work together. In fact, they should. So thank you very much for coming. Every one of you who sits here, probably I don't need to talk to, because if you were the guys that I needed to talk to, you wouldn't be here, because you're not interested in business ethics. So what does it mean to run an ethical business? Does that mean you have to comply with the law? Does that get you to an ethical business? Does it mean you have to have good governance? Will that get you there? Right, I'm hearing a no here. That's enheartening, but I mean, so what do you think?
It's definitely a guideline, but it doesn't, substantially make you an ethical business as such.
All right. So I would tell you that if something becomes law, that is the outlier for ethics. There's a heck of a lot of area before you get to law. Law means everybody pretty much agrees that's not ethical. And when everybody agrees that's not ethical, it must be pretty bad. The one area of business ethics that has been promulgated into law is bribery, effectively, corruption, anti-corruption. Whether it's enforced all the time, that's a different debate entirely. But we do know that most people in the world pretty much agree that bribery is not an acceptable business practice. Okay, and that's been legislated. There's an awful lot other than bribery that is still part of the ethics of your business, and people differ. We all have different standards. We all have different ways of looking at questions. We'll have different answers for the same questions. And sometimes two people will have the same answer and they will both be correct in their point of view, each coming from his own reference framework. So it's not a simple question. Ethics is not a simple question. Ethics is pretty much something that's inside of you. It's your way of life, how you choose to deal with decisions, because that's what it's about. I believe people are the sum total of the decisions they make in life. Who you are, your character, is determined by how you decided to treat every difficult situation you came across. So that's what I think that's what ethics is about. It's about making those decisions and deciding for yourself what is right or wrong, irrespective of what the law or the legal framework in which you operate say. So, interesting question, something that's very simple and something that each of us are confronted with or have been confronted with. If you walk into a shop and the shop attendant gives you too much change, what do you do?
Tell them.
Right, he tells them. Everybody doesn't. In fact, most people will think about it. Lots of people will probably walk out. If you have a supplier who's rendered you a service and he forgets to bill you, what do you do?
Capitalize. No, I'm joking.
Question. Capitalize. Hope he forgets. Remind him. Will you pay your bill the moment it arrives? Or within the term that you've agreed with your supplier? Or will you sort of wait? Make him struggle a bit, earn a bit of extra interest. I'm talking about practices that go on out there every single day. And some of the biggest culprits here are some of our biggest companies out there. Interest rates. Interest makes for big income. If you make all your suppliers wait, you earn a lot of extra cash. You make your suppliers fairly unhappy, but they're dependent on you. So I'm going to write something down. And there are people here much older than me and with much more wisdom. Please interrupt me and tell me if you want to add something you think I'm talking absolute rubbish. I've found there are two ways of doing business, and you have a choice. And I will describe to you the tools used in the two methodologies of using business. They are basically, I try to keep this very simple. I see basically three tools used in an unethical business. The first tool is deception. Used in all kinds of different ways, but an unethical business will not disclose what it needs to disclose to you, so it'll keep you in the dark as much as it can, and frankly, it'll simply lie to you. Right. So most of you guys, I believe, is in the supply side, on the supply side of business, not on the customer side necessarily. We're all customers, consumers, but the big customers are sitting out there. So for you, this is a very tricky situation because you need to sell. You need to sell your products to your customer base out there, and you have a choice as to how you're going to sell it. Are you going to oversell? Are you going to make promises that you can't keep? This is a very, very difficult not to actually use this tool in your business as a supplier. I tell you now, it's very challenging. And the biggest suppliers out there are the best at using this tool. They are brilliant at it. I typically act for customers, by the way. The second tool that you use, if the first tool doesn't work, and believe me, I'm a lawyer, I know how that first tool works, right? I write contracts to use that tool let me put it differently. I write contracts to eliminate that tool from the contract, frankly. That's what I try to do from a customer's perspective, particularly you get rid of the deception. You make the contract as simple as possible, and in which case all the complexity in which all this is hidden is removed. That's a device that I use. The second one, second tool that an unethical business will use is intimidation. If deception doesn't work, if it doesn't get you to do what it wants you to do in a subtle manner, it'll try and intimidate you into it. It's the second tool. So it uses whatever leverage it can to threaten you, however subtly it does that. That's a standard business tool of business out there. And you guys are going to be faced with it from a customer will typically use that because the customer is very powerful. The big customers are very powerful. They can very easily intimidate, very easily. So if you go and try and sell, you can sell to me, but this is what you must do. And if you want the sale, any form of leverage that people can use, they will use that tool if they have leverage. And I can tell you now, if these two tools don't work, the third one is the one I've already mentioned. Number one doesn't work. I'm not able to actually deceive you in some way into the deal. Number two doesn't work. I can't intimidate you into the deal. Number three will be the only option that's left. And this one is very subtle. You'd be surprised. This is taking you out to a lunch, have you out, come have a hunt with us, game farm, whatever the case may be. This happens in all kinds of ways. That isn't ostensibly bribery, but it compromises how you react in a negotiation or in a business relationship. And it's that compromise that makes you act no longer in an objective manner, but changes the way in which you respond. Okay, so what's the counter of this? And this sounds very idealistic, I know, very idealistic. But the counter is simple. So what do we want to do? We have another color here. On the other side, we've got very simply honesty, so the truth. What's my second word for that? Oh, yes. Fairness and integrity. And that sounds very simple. So that's what I call ethical business behavior. One, you're honest in your behavior. Under promise, over perform. Not the other way around. Fair in your behavior. If you have power, you don't abuse it. Power is something to be used very carefully in a business relationship. If you abuse power, you're overreaching, you're hurting the relationship. Business is built on relationship, as far as I'm concerned. And your best business is built on trust. It's something very rare. If you find it, protect it. But that's your best business. Why? Because you don't spend an awful lot of effort protecting all the time. The biggest problems that businesses face is internal trust issues. If your business internally has got if there's a problem in the sense of distrust, people's self-interest becoming more important than the business interest, you've got huge problems. House divided will not stand. But once your internal issues are sorted out, externally, I'd love to do business on trust. I'd love to. I'm a lawyer. I know it's not possible in most cases, unfortunately. Unfortunately. Would have been fantastic if it had been, but it isn't. So you build, in the deals that you make, you build sufficient power to force the behavior you want, which is really a pity. The old deals of handshake is really the best deal. But then you need to be able to look a person in the eye and trust that person to do what he said he would do. And unfortunately, that is rare, very rare. So what you have to do is to foster a relationship where people work with each other in trust. And unfortunately, if you can't trust the other guy, you need to contract. That's what you do. So you then force the issue. But it's not ideal. It's not ideal. It's not what I want to, how I would like to run any business that I'm involved in. So there's a number of things that you guys will have to address. You are entrepreneurs. Generally, am I right? Guys with small companies or startups or growing. You are in a fantastic, unique position in that you can build a business culture in your organizations from the top. It is not possible to change a business culture from the bottom up. Won't work. It's the guys at the top determine the culture of the organization. And as Wynand said to me earlier, it's not what you say, it's what you do. Whoever else is in your business with you is going to look at you and say, what is this guy doing? I'll do what he does. It doesn't matter if you say to them, this is our principles and these are our policies. It's like, sorry, I've got a couple of kids. They only do what you do. They don't, you can say to them whatever you like. They're not going to do what you say unless you do it. In fact, they'll challenge you on it, which is fantastic. So it's a fantastic position to be in to start a business because you've got one opportunity to establish a culture in your business that can last, but be very protective of it because it can be destroyed very quickly. Don't know if anybody remembers a guy by the name of Greg Smith. He used to work for Goldman Sachs, the big American bank. A couple of years ago, I think it was about 2010, 2011, Greg Smith was a South African who went to Stanford on a scholarship and then started working in the New York offices of this bank. And he then resigned in a very unusual public manner. I don't know if any of you recall this. Nobody. Oh, there's one man, Renew. He wrote his resignation to the Financial Times in New York, I believe, and they eventually published it, and it caused an immense stir because he basically, let me read you the first 3 paragraphs of his resignation letter as it was published. Today is my last day at Goldman Sachs after almost 12 years at the firm. So this guy's been there for a while. First as a summer intern while at Stanford, and then in New York for 10 years, and now in London. So 2 years in London. I believe I have worked here long enough to understand the trajectory of its culture, its people, and its identity. And I can honestly say the environment now is as toxic and destructive as I have ever seen it. To put the problem in the simplest terms, the interest of the client continue to be sidelined in the way the firm operates and thinks about making money. Hear those 2 things: client, money. Goldman Sachs is one of the world's largest and most important investment banks, and it is too integral to global finance to continue to act in this way. So, okay, he's preaching a bit. Firm has veered so far from the place I joined right out of college that I can no longer in good conscience say that I identify with what it stands for. It might sound surprising to a skeptical public, but culture was always a vital part of Goldman Sachs' success. It revolved around teamwork, integrity, a spirit of humility, and always doing right by our clients. When I read those words and I say, this guy, what bank are you talking about? I haven't seen one like that. The culture was the secret sauce that made this place great and allowed us to earn our clients' trust for 143 years. This is not a new establishment. It wasn't just about making money. This alone will not sustain a firm for long. It had something to do with pride and belief in the organization. I'm sad to say that I look around today and see virtually no trace of the culture that made me love working for this firm. What I'm saying to you is, you have a choice. Why are you in business? Is it pure self-interest? Are you here to make money? You can be very successful. You can make a lot of money. I doubt you're going to leave behind an awfully big legacy, but you'll make your money, potentially, if that's what your goal is. Or your goal could potentially be to say, what's not just in my interest, but in everybody's interest? Let's see if we can find something that is worthwhile to be involved in. That makes a bit of a difference. And that could be anything that you guys do. I mean, I listened to some fantastic ideas in there today. I'm really impressed with what I heard. It's a question of, is my idea something that is beneficial to pretty much everybody out there? And the funny thing is, most ideas are. But it's still a matter of how you run the organization that you're in. If your choice is bottom line, go make your bottom line. Become Goldman Sachs. No problem. But if your choice is to actually make a difference, leave a bit of a legacy behind of what you've done, then I would suggest you look at the way in which you run your business. And you've got the opportunity now when you appoint your people, because good people is the key. You appoint the wrong people, you're dead. Every individual that you draw into your business will change the culture. If it's not the right person, it's going to destroy the culture. So it's very important that you give the leadership from the top, but it's also critical who you draw into your business with you. Absolutely critical. So there's a number of things that you can do to foster a good business culture, an ethical business culture, including considering your social responsibility. We are in a certain environment. We live in a certain country. Do you play a role? At what stage do you begin to play the role? Is there something that you think from a business perspective fits in with what you're doing in your social environment? How do you make a difference there? It's not a bad idea to start considering that. Even as a small business, how do I play a role in the environment that I'm in? I think it's an important issue to contribute to. The way in which you approach deal making, negotiations, staff issues. Do you pay your bills? Very simply, do you pay your bills on time? Do you declare all your tax? Do you pay your tax? So in practice, what I'm saying is, yes, you must comply with regulatory environment to begin with, but that's just the start. There's a lot on top of that that you should be considering if you want to run a truly ethical business. Regulatory environment is just the start. Another thing that I think is of critical importance is how you structure the business and how you incentivize your people, because they will run after the incentive. If your incentives are purely monetary based, you will find that your staff or the people who work for you will purely drive for the money, because that's what the incentive is. If your performance is measured on things apart from just money, maybe that's not such a bad plan. You will get a different type of culture. So what you use to drive the people in your organization and how you approach them has massive implications. If you are in a partnership, you look very differently at a business from a company. In a partnership, you need to take each other into consideration in a much more direct manner, because you're forced to. In a company, if I can outvote you, I don't really care what you say. So I'm not advocating the use of partnerships for business as a rule, because it is a very dangerous vehicle to use. But you must think about this. Do you treat the people in your business as your partners? Or do you treat them in an autocratic manner? Are you basically making the decisions and expecting everybody to fall in line? Or are you in a flat structure? Are you actually considering input from the people that you work with? Do they feel as if they're contributing something? Or are you simply dictating the terms? I can tell you that it creates a very different atmosphere. Irrespective of people are employed by you, you should be treating them pretty much as your equal from most perspectives, I would think, so as to get people to contribute. Anyway, I read yesterday, I was doing a bit of research for this talk, and I got fairly depressed, because what I'm seeing out there doesn't reflect anything of what I've just said, I think, if you look at the media. I don't know how you guys feel about it. I'm looking at governments and I'm looking at companies, and I see pretty much the same thing. There's an example here of a guy named Michael Woodford. Who's ever heard of him? He was the first CEO of a company called Olympus. Ever heard of them? Camera company, Japanese company. He was appointed as the new president and CEO of Olympus in 2011, and within 2 weeks, he was no longer the president and CEO of Olympus. Why? He arrived there, and he got a newspaper article that effectively said that the guys that Olympus has performed a deal, or done a deal, in which they paid about $2 billion US for 3 Mickey Mouse companies that doesn't really do much. So he started investigating. He called the chairman of his board and the vice chairman of his board for a meeting, and they had lunch, and then he called a board meeting to discuss this. He's the new CEO, and the CEO is basically is a salaried employee, but he is the top salaried employee of your company. So he called the board meeting with the agenda of discussing this problem, and he walked into the board meeting, and within 8 minutes, he was fired. So the first thing the chairman did was change of agenda, all in favor of firing Mr. Woodford, and he wasn't even finished saying the word Woodford, and everybody's hands, the entire board of directors' hands went up, and he was up. So now you can't speak to the board because you have a conflict of interest. You've just been fired. Mr. Woodford went public. He was also named by 4 English newspapers as the businessman of the year, ironically, thereafter. He went public, and Olympus lost about 70% of their share value, and the entire board was removed eventually. But I'm not saying that this is a small issue. This is an issue that I see every day out there in big companies, in suppliers, in customers. It's everywhere. You personally must make decisions. How do I treat this situation? What is right and what is wrong? And that depends on you. Another example, the Greek government. You all know the Greek government currently is in a bit of trouble. Greece, effectively, is in a bit of trouble. I want to say that South Africa is pretty much heading the same direction, but okay. Way back in 2011, the Greek government and somebody that I've already mentioned, the US bank Goldman Sachs, did the following. Goldman Sachs devised a special kind of swap with fictional exchange rates for the Greek government. That enabled Greece to receive a far higher sum than the actual euro market value for the euros they were selling in dollars and yen. In that way, Goldman Sachs secretly arranged additional credit, which is now their problem, of up to $1 billion for the Greeks. The credit disguised as a swap didn't show up in the Greek debt statistics, and so Eurostat, being the guys who act for the European Union, couldn't see it effectively. So this is not a problem for just for us, but it starts with us. So the Greek government today is harvesting effectively the fruit of their labors. They basically used number one there, okay, to deceive the European Union. And they had an ally, the same old company that Greg Smith resigned from. So it's an interesting world out there. We have another example that I can give you is we have currently the banks seem to be in trouble a lot these days. I mean, they really do. Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase, Barclays, know them. They have a branch here. I think ABSA will be very upset with me if I call them that. UBS, Royal Bank of Scotland, was accused by the US and UK officials of brazenly cheating clients to boost their own profits. How did they do that? They basically manipulated the foreign exchange rates. They worked together, they clubbed together, the traders and the foreign exchange floor clubbed together. There's about 7 banks involved. And they have just admitted to, I think it's not too long ago, this is May 2015, they've just admitted to criminal activity. For the first time, the big US banks have actually admitted to crimes because this is actually criminalized. So what I'm saying, guys, is business ethics is, it sounds like a simple topic, it isn't. And it's going to come at you. There's no way you can avoid it. What I'm advising you to do is make the right decision day one. Because once you've made the wrong decision, it is very, very hard to turn around and change that decision. And when the next decision comes, it's going to be even harder to make it the right one at that point. Don't start by making the wrong decisions. Because if you do, the path is one way, frankly, as far as I'm concerned. Try and keep it, and don't make hasty decisions. Don't be intimidated into decisions. Take your time. If you're not sure, don't make the decision. Wait until you are sure. Don't be pressured. Pressure creates bad decisions. And people will pressure you. Don't make a mistake. They will. But the longer you wait, the better your decision typically is. Go and do your homework. Make sure that you know all the facts so that you can get to the right decision. Because you guys are going to be decision makers. That's what your job is going to be. You're going to be running companies, hopefully, big companies eventually. And every decision you make is going to have an influence on not just you, on lots of people. It's a very responsible position to be in. So just get it right from the start. Any questions? Anybody else who wants to contribute, please. I've been speaking a lot, much more than I want to do. Sure.
Thinking about what you said, I think with the interconnectedness of the world, I think we may have seen the emergence of this sort of social contract that arises between societies and business, where I think, and I'd really like to hear your perspectives on that, with that sort of emergence and the increase in the power of the consumer has...
It's really good, isn't it? Really good. Absolutely. I mean, China doesn't believe in that contract, by the way. But it's hard. It's becoming harder and harder to hide. The deception issue is becoming harder and harder, because if I can separate you, divide and conquer works. It really does. If I can separate you and I can make it difficult for you to actually have your voice heard, I can also intimidate you. And that's typically what you want to avoid. So social media is a fantastic tool to generate awareness, and awareness creates power. Because now I'm no longer alone. I mean, South Africans are not very well known for their cohesiveness and the working together and so forth, but it is a fantastic tool to use to display or expose dishonesty in particular, or people abusing their power. It is, but yeah, not if you're in China apparently. They'll lock you up. Yes.
Where do you draw the line between so-called smart business?
Sorry, Gerard, can you just use the mic?
Where do you draw the line between so-called smart business and ethical behavior? Just think, for example, a financial manager will immediately advise you to take as long as possible to pay your
Sure.
debtors and whatever.
Of course you will.
And
Yeah.
so you can get interest, you can make money for not doing anything. As where ethically you would say pay them as soon as possible. And yeah, I mean from a business perspective it's cash flows, you know. Don't pay them, but like from an ethical decision point of view,
Absolutely.
pay them and they should be paid.
So it's a personal decision. I believe what you've agreed with them contractually, you must comply with. That's the first thing. So being ethical doesn't mean being weak. It means being open, honest, and upfront. It means you negotiate as hard as you want to, with integrity and honesty. So I'm going to say to you, and fairness as well. I'm not going to abuse you, but I'm not going to let you push me around. So if I agreed to 30 days with you, I'll pay you on 30 days. If I haven't agreed with you anything, the question is, now it's your decision as to how to pay. You know more or less what the market standard is. I'd be very upset if you paid me in 90 days.
Unfortunately, that's what most people do. So
Unacceptable as far as I'm concerned, completely. Why? Because the guy's already paying VAT on the invoice that he's raised with you, he's already paying income tax, and he has to wait for 90 days before you pay him. 30 days, as far as I'm concerned, is the max. If you go over that, I'm starting to become very concerned. So I would not pay anybody that supplies to me in more than 30 days, and frankly, I would like to pay them as soon as possible. Why? It's all about relationship. So what am I fostering? I'm fostering a long-term relationship with my supplier. Is my supplier going to come to my aid on the day of emergency? Without doubt he will. Why? Because I'm treating him well. There's a big difference between once-off transactions and long-term relationships. And in our game, they're generally long-term. In the IT technology space, it's very rare for once-off transactions. So if you're repeatedly using people, or they're repeatedly using you, you have a long-term relationship, and you protect the relationship. Do you want good service? If you pay me on 90 days and all my other clients are paying me on 30 days, what do you think I'm going to do if there's a conflict between you and another client? I'm going to do that guy's work first. I'm going to tell that guy to go sit in the corner until I'm finished. Simple as that. Most of my clients pay me within 7 days. Why? Because I've got a long-term relationship with them in which they trust me not to abuse my power over them, which I have. As an attorney, I advise people, and they generally listen to my advice. Not always, but generally. So if I abuse that trust and abuse the position I'm in, I'm going to lose the client to begin with. It'll take time because trust breaks down slowly with people who actually trust you. Interesting that. But it will eventually get to that point. But firstly, what's going to happen is the relationship will start suffering. I will get less business, whatever. So what are you trying to achieve when you do that? How important is your reputation? How important is your relationship? How important is the trust that you've established with your client base? More important than a couple of rands worth of interest, I'm sorry, as far as I'm concerned. No comparison. Anything else? Question there.
My question is about product development, but specifically intellectual property protection. As an attorney or as a lawyer, what is your opinion on the small businesses moving away from the traditional formal protection methods to more informal methods,
such
linking
as
onto the social contact that's being developed, not developed, but developing within the business world?
Unfortunately, I would say to you that the informal methods will probably not protect you in the big world. In the big business world, you have to have, if you have an informal method or you have I'd love to have an informal arrangement with you. I have no contracts with any of my clients. I don't want one. But when I walk into a big customer or I walk into with my client, typically, there's hundreds and hundreds of people working for that person. I cannot afford to expose him to the risk of I have to enforce it in some method that I have to now use social media or try and harm the reputation of the entity. I don't think generally speaking, that's a very good way of doing it either, because when you do that, you seem spiteful. You don't seem like, what happened to Greg Smith? Okay, he's done, that's exactly what he did, wasn't it? Today, if you go and read the comments about that letter that he wrote, most people will tell you he was an idealist and possibly he was slightly unhappy with the fact that he didn't get the raise he wanted. Because what did Goldman Sachs do? They went out on a spin offensive, effectively. They put their PR department out. They had a look and they started scratching around in the stuff that he's done for the company. And the first thing they came across was that he asked for a duplication of his salary. And they put that out in the public domain to say basically he's a disgruntled employee who was unhappy with the fact that he didn't get the raise and the promotion that he wanted, So your big organizations is going to counter it. And that now he looks like a spiteful individual who couldn't take the fact that he wasn't recognized in the way he was. So it has limited value in some situations, unfortunately. So the traditional methods, they remain very important. I'm a big fan of a patent, big fan of it. I'm also a big fan of a non-disclosure agreement. If you're really doing professional business, the guy on the other side shouldn't blink. Otherwise, he thinks you're Mickey Mouse. Who are you? So you put the NDA in front of him and say, I want to do business with you, but I can't talk to you unless we have a suitable arrangement in place to protect our interests. Done. If he's trying to take advantage of you, it's one thing. But if he's a good businessman, he'll say, oh, that's how we do business. No problem. So when people don't ask me, if I act for customers and I get people rolling over, I'm concerned. I'm frankly concerned because I don't know if they can deliver. Typically tends to show me some desperation. Okay, anything else? Comment? I can never do this. I don't want to do it like this. Whatever. Philip.
So we've got businesses here who potentially going to see Africa as a market going
Were you talking at number 3 there?
Yes, for example,
Number 3.
some rules in the African market.
How are you trade doing without doing that?
Yeah, so, for example, that issue. Do they decide they're not to do business there? What would your answer to that problem be?
Simple answer. If I have to bribe you, if I have to pay you a kickback, I can't do business with you. Done. I'll go elsewhere. That's me. I'll find somebody else. If I cannot disclose the business deal that you're putting in front of me to your board of directors, I know I've got a problem. So whatever you put on the table to me, if that's something that I can freely discuss with your board of directors, sure, let's do it. If it means I'm setting up some little company here on the side for some sort of commission, I'm probably not going to be very interested. Remember, it doesn't just compromise the guy that's taking the bribe. It compromises you. And if it comes out that you were involved in that type of deal, it compromises your entire reputation and the rest of your business. Why would you take that risk? No brainer. But you're going to be confronted with it. You're going to try and deal with it. So, I mean, if I've worked out in my head, I love traveling in Africa. I've worked in my head what I'll do if one of the traffic officers in one of my neighboring countries tries to stop you and ask for a spot fine. First thing I would want to know is, what is the name of your superior officer, and can I have his phone number, please?
It's probably more expensive.
Maybe.
Every
Where's your, who can I talk to that's high up in this chain? And that's the thing. So if you know, if somebody's doing that, I would go higher up. It's your choice whether you disclose, but you go higher up in the chain. Then you look for somebody else in the organization to work with. But it's a fact of life. People call it source. Have you paid your, no. Have you had to dispense any source? Yeah. So it's definitely part of standard business practices, unfortunately, in many instances. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that taking a client out for lunch is a form of bribery.
No, I wouldn't go that far.
So
Wouldn't go that far, but
or hunting trip rather.
yeah, that would be a little bit tough.
But in business, you know that you'd rather do business with someone you prefer. Right?
Relationship.
Or you like, so you build the relationship.
Build a relationship.
So what if, can you say that, yes, I'll take my potential investor out on a hunting trip, but not go out on the hunting trip and then give me the deal, but just to build that relationship, he gets to know you.
It's all about why you're taking him out there. Why are you taking him out there?
So if you take him out to build a relationship, that's okay. But if you take him out in regards to let's get the deal.
He's already rationalizing this thing in his head. Yeah.
But I mean, like, but you want to get say, well, we're all looking for.
You're looking for the deal. Yeah, you are.
So then you know it's between you and someone else. If your advantage can be that he gets to know you personally, because then you know on a personal level, or the investor will know on a personal level, this guy is a nice person, and I can see he's honest, maybe a family guy, whatever, something that's congruent with the investor's own values. And you go, why don't you have dinner with me and my family? Why would that be unethical? Because it's not, you're not giving him or taking him out to dinner to get the contract. You're taking him out to dinner to build the relationship.
Okay, so who pays for the hunting trip?
No, you'll pay for the hunting
I see. Okay.
Well, we'll say, depending, you're not going to say you're going to run until lion.
It's a.
You know.
I'm with you. It's as I said.
Where do you draw the line between making it about the relationship and making
you'll know.
Guilting him into the?
You'll know. You'll know exactly why you're doing what you're doing.
So
you'll know.
When you start getting the feeling that again,
you'll know.
He's thinking it's about taking advantage of him.
Absolutely. Are you compromising his ability to make a decision in an objective manner? Yes or no. If you are checking him out, that's fine. And if you're there to check him out, How does he react to circumstances? I love testing people. A little bit naughty that way. I love testing people to see how they respond when you give them a gap. Because that's where you see who they are. But you'll know why you're taking him out there. I mean, I've recently been involved where guys have 2.5 billion rand deal. People were taken all over the world.
Oh, that's dodgy.
I agree with you. I think in the end,
You know.
and you must be comfortable. But I think maybe if you wanted slightly more objectively, you could say, is that something at a level where it could actually influence his decision? So if he's used to going to good restaurants with his wife for his own cost, and you take him to a good restaurant, he's not going to change his
Agreed.
decision. But if you take him and his wife to
Cape
Walt
Grace,
Disney World,
whatever, yeah.
and
Walt
he's
Disney.
never taken
Yeah.
his wife to theater, then you're definitely far better.
Yeah. You'll know. You'll know if you're trying to influence the decision. Good luck, guys. It's a tough old world out there, but it's fun. It's fun to actually. It's really fun to do the right thing. You would not believe it, but it is really fun. You sleep better as well, but it's fun. I enjoy something weird about me. My wife will tell you. I enjoy exposing deception, intimidation, and bribery. I actually enjoy it because it is such a useful tool in the armor of the guy who sits on the other side. I'm not saying I'm perfect by any stretch, but it is such a useful tool because the moment you try it and I catch you, you are in such deep trouble. If I'm in a negotiation against a guy and he tries any of those things, first thing you do is expose it. Then morally, your high ground is like there and he's down there and he is fighting now for his life. So whatever he tried to achieve has been destroyed in seconds. He destroys the trust that is built with your client when you try to deceive him, and you use what he's done against him. And you destroy whatever he's tried to do with that. Then he's at such a disadvantage in a negotiation. You can actually push him around. So be very careful. You think you're doing one of those things, it'll be used against you. In the end, depending on, and you can get away with it many, many times, and I've seen that. Many times you'll get away with it, and then one day you're going to run into something. And not only is it going to destroy the thing that you're trying to achieve then, it's going to probably have much more rippling effects than you would ever have imagined. Okay, thanks.